Hello and welcome back to the Roundup by News of the Week, the show where I, Jake Whitwell, summarise and explain the news, helping you to stay informed. This week on the show, there's loads to talk about, from new drug offences to pension laws and loads of international news regarding aid centres and ceasefires, as well as many other stories. With that in mind then, I'll get on to the news now, starting with policy change. In news on policy change, The Independent detailed gang leaders who force children to conceal drugs will face 10 years in jail. The upcoming crime and policing bill will create an offence for plugging, or basically the practice of gang leaders forcing vulnerable people or children to carry illegal goods in their bodies. This will be punishable by 10 years in prison, and specifically the offence will be called internal concealment. Coerced internal concealment. This can be part of things like county lines drug operations, where the vulnerable people, possibly children like I said, are forced to swallow things or hide things in their bodies, which carries health risks or the risk of fatal overdoses if the package breaks inside their body. Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister who is responsible for the bill, said the perpetrators of such crimes are truly evil. She also said the measures will turn the table on them and help hold them to account. City AM noted Rachel Reeves is set to shake up pensions to boost the UK's investment. Bit vague, you might say. I kind of thought so as well. But what they're talking about here is the pensions scheme bill. The bill means pension pots, which can be split up when someone changes their job, which people might be familiar with. My audience probably not. They will be merged, so all your pension pots will be combined. It also introduces a scheme to see how well they're performing, as well as other schemes to offer clear investment goals, to turn savings into retirement income. Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary, said the changes are about securing a better value for savers by long-term driven investments to boost growth as well. Rachel Reeves called the bill a game changer, saying it will drive £50 billion of investment directly into the economy. How will they do that? Again, I wasn't sure. That's another good question. I've read for about half hour, trying to get my mind around it. It seems to be that the combination of pension pots will create bigger pots which can be put into investments rather than loads of littler smaller ones, which will increase the amount of investment. A 10-year plan will also come along in this month's spending review, which will outline more steps to making this £50 billion number. In energy, housing and transport, there are also going to be investment as per the government's review on the subject, but basically they're thinking that the investment in these areas will help generate further investment or make investment easier. In their review they talked about an investment pipeline. The Independent reported that winter fuel payments won't be reinstated for all who lost it. Amid confusion over the possibility of a U-turn on winter fuel payments, splits in the cabinet and other little murmurs of discontent and things like that, the Pensions Minister Torsten Bell spoke on the issue. He was talking to the Work and Pensions Committee as he responded to a question over a reversal, saying that basically there would not be a full U-turn. He did say that what the government is doing is looking at making more people eligible for the winter fuel payment. He also said the plans will be set out in the autumn, which is something already speculated. That includes the plans on how they will fund this, which isn't yet clear. The Telegraph noted that Starmer has agreed to spend 3.5% on defence after NATO pressure. This week, Starmer pledged to raise defence spending to 3%. Then the NATO Secretary-General demanded a 3.5% raise rather than a 3% one. It's expected it'll come at the next alliance meeting, and likely along with details on how the increase will be funded past the 3% mark that they're already planning for. And that concludes the news I got on policy change. Moving on to news on foreign policy, then the Telegraph covered a last-ditch attempt to stop the Chagos Island deal. Conservative peers have launched a motion to kill the deal on the grounds that the cost is too high and that it threatens national security. One peer said it will cost the taxpayer £30 billion and put Britain's strategic defence at risk. Well, as we know, Mauritius is allied with Russia and China. That's what's been said in the news recently, and there is debates over the cost, with Starmer saying it will cost a net of just over 3 billion, I think, while the Tories are saying close to this 30 billion figure. So it's a bit unclear about the exact cost and the exact nature of the security concerns, but that's what they've said in their motion. The motion could force the government to tell the Commons why it wants to ignore the Lords' motion. If it does this, the Lord has little power to stop the Commons, as it's weaker. But if the motion goes through via a vote in the Lords, then it's the first time that's happened since 2010, when the process was implemented. So it could carry some like outside theoretical pressure, just can't actually stop the treaty in full. Channel 4 reported that the UK steel industry is set to escape Trump's tariffs, the higher rate of tariffs. Rachel Reeves announced 50% tariffs won't be put on the steel industry in the UK as she answered questions on her spending review coming this month. This brings some clarity as to the deal brokered between the UK and the US last month in a heads of terms deal, although it's thought that there could be terms over the auto industry as well. And that concludes the news I got on foreign policy. In news on other politics, the Independent detailed the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, has scolded Keir Starmer over leaks to the Defence Review. The Speaker accused the government of committing a blatant breach of the Ministerial Code over the releasing of details of the Defence Spending Review before it was published in Parliament. A press release was also held before it was announced in Parliament as well, which makes the matter worse for them. He said he had the government breached paragraph 9.1 of the Ministerial Code, which doesn't mean anything to me, let alone you. It basically states the most important government policy should be announced in Parliament rather than outside of it, because that's where power in the UK is held. It's just out of respect for the office and sort of the body of elected officials. It's supposed to be more representative of the population. The Ministerial Code is a bit of a weird one as well, because in British politics it outlines how ministers and politicians are expected to act and their practice in Parliament as MPs. It's held to like soft pressure by the media and the electorate. It's expected that breakages sometimes lead to firings, but they aren't enforced. It's not like a codified or enshrined thing. It's basically soft pressure on the government to act in a certain way. The Telegraph reported on splits in Reform UK over the idea of a burqa ban. The party's newest MP, Sarah Ponchin, spoke at PMQs asking the government to follow suit on Britain's European partners and ban the burqa. Other Reform MPs like Richard Tice, Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson all called for a national conversation about the banning of the burqa. A spokesperson said it wasn't party policy, while the chairman, Zia Youssef, has called the question dumb because the party in power, the Labour Party, wouldn't actually do it. BBC News then noted that he resigned as chairman. It's supposedly unrelated. Reform UK chairman resigned on Friday, and he said that getting the party elected was no longer a good use of his time. It was reportedly a quick decision, with the party leader Nigel Farage not really even knowing about it until 10 minutes before, according to him. Farage did say he was genuinely sorry about Youssef's resignation and described him as enormously talented. Then, less than 48 hours later, the BBC detailed that he returned to the party in a different role. He has returned to work for the party as a new role in a new role on the Doge team, which is modelled after the American Department of Government Efficiency, which was obviously headed by Elon Musk until last week. And that concluded the news, and that concluded the news I got in like other politics. Moving on to global news then, I got loads of news on Gaza this week. So firstly, LBC detailed at least 24 people were killed while waiting for aid, according to the Gazan Health Ministry. 24 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli attack on one of the new aid distribution centres. That's despite the IDF saying that they did not kill any civilians, that they were targeting suspects that went off the agreed upon or the recognised route. Reuters reported on those centres reopening. Aid distribution halted for a day after the attacks that I just mentioned. There were 26 trucks arriving when it reopened. The interim director of the GHF, the new Israeli-backed aid distribution sites, said that they were looking at opening more centres as well. The Guardian reported the US vetoed a resolution for an unconditional ceasefire at the UN Security Council. The USA vetoed the resolution, while the other 14 countries on the council voted in favour, making it the 5th time the US has vetoed such a motion. Mark Rubio, the Secretary of State, as well as I think he has another role as well, said the US would not support any resolution which draws false equivalency between Hamas and Israel and which disregards Israel's right to defend itself. You might ask, oh, Jake, that seems that they're undemocratic, and it kind of is, but this is just how the UN Security Council works. And I could say I'm going to give you a lecture on that, courtesy of my degree, but I'm not really going to because that's boring. Basically, the 5 permanent members on the UN Security Council have a veto vote as a result of their permanent membership. The other 10 members are elected by other countries, and together the body deals with like international issues and peacekeeping and wars and all of this and ceasefires. Those members, like I said, have a veto as a result of their position, which sort of creates like 2 tiers where there's the permanent members with their powers, who are like France, China, the UK, US, and Russia. And then there's the elected ones, which sort of change, and they have less power technically, but they can give credibility to a certain issue, like a ceasefire thing. But it doesn't matter if it's voted down. That's like the end of the resolution, basically. Moving on then, the BBC News detailed the Israeli military recovered 2 hostages in southern Gaza. The IDF recovered 2 hostages, both Israeli Americans, who were murdered on October 7th by Hamas gunmen. This leaves 56 hostages still in Gaza, with 20 of them thought to be alive. The PM Netanyahu said that Israel won't stop and won't rest until all the hostages are returned dead and alive. Reuters reported the Hamas chief has said the group did not reject the ceasefire deal proposal from last week, but that they had instead sought changes. After the new ceasefire deal last week, which under the Witkoff framework, which outlined measures for the return of hostages and exchange of prisoners and all of that, but didn't have terms over the Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. It was basically assumed that Hamas rejected it because they were looking for that clause to be there. They were at the time, they did say they were open to negotiation, but it was seen as a rejection by the US and the Witkoff, the envoy, and all of that. Basically, all that's changed is Hamas have released a pre-recorded message which they basically explained they did not reject the ceasefire deal, but they wanted certain changes in it. The Times noted that Israel has threatened a raid on the aid boat Greta Thunberg is sailing to Gaza. The Freedom Flotilla, which is carrying Thunberg and 11 other activists, along with a symbolic amount of aid to Gaza, has been described by the organisers as a non-violent direct action to challenge Israel, their illegal siege and their escalating war crimes. It's currently west of Crete, but there are fears, especially from the activists, that the boat will not make it all the way to Gaza because of the increasing risk of Israeli attack the closer it gets to Gaza. An Israeli spokesperson said they are prepared to deal with ships like this, and that they had experience in dealing with them. He also said they will act accordingly to deal with it, but he didn't elaborate at all on what that might mean and how that might look. In non-Gaza news, The Independent detailed the UN Assembly, which is different to the UN Security Council I just explained, has elected Germany's ex-foreign minister as the next president, with Russia demanding a secret vote. Basically, in a secret vote demanded by Russia due to anti-Russian rhetoric, an ex-German foreign minister, I think it's Annalena Baerbock, was elected the head of the 193-member body. She was elected with an overwhelming majority of 167 votes when only 88 votes are needed. There was some controversy, though, over her candidacy, as she replaced the other German candidate, Schmidt, who basically lost her job when the country's election happened. She was not elected. The Times noted Trump has implemented a travel ban on 12 countries. Trump signed a bill banning all citizens from travel from Afghanistan, Chad, the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. A partial ban is in place for 7 other countries like Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. These countries will be banned from entering the US on tourist visas, on student visas, or permanent settlement. The bill was signed citing national security concerns, and it's faced backlash in the USA. Anyway, that's really the news I got on global news, so I'll move on to stats and trends now. In Stats and Trends, The Guardian detailed that public support for Israel in Western Europe is at its lowest ever recorded, according to a poll by YouGov. Polling of the citizens of Germany, France, Denmark, Italy, and Spain were all at its lowest or joint lowest in terms of support. The UK polled at -46, which is slightly higher than its lowest of -49. Overall, there was only between 13 and 21% support in favour of Israel, 60 compared with 63 to 70% taking the opposite view. Another survey found that fewer and fewer Western Europeans continue to see Israel's military operations as justified. The Independent noted that a study has found glaciers will keep melting for centuries even after warming stops. 40% of the world's glacier mass is set to disappear due to past emissions. That means that melting will continue even if our current rate stops. The study also found that half of the current glacier mass could be preserved at 1.5 degrees C, which is the internationally agreed target. The academics behind the study, Dr. Harry Zakorali, I think, said every fraction of a degree matters, and that's what the study shows. The Guardian detailed a survey of Muslim MPs has showed there is disquiet over the party's stance on Gaza. A Labour Party survey of Muslim representatives, that is local councillors, MPs, and like affiliated members, 77% of respondents said the government should end all UK exports to Israel, and a further 84% said that they would support sanctions on the country. The results are from an online survey which 221 people took part in out of an eligible 477. The Wall Street Journal noted that the Office for National Statistics found an inflation data error in what the journal has said is a blow to its credibility. The error was in calculations over the number of vehicles subjected to certain taxes. It meant that inflation was overstated by 0.1% in the last report. The ONS said the inflation figure wouldn't be adjusted, presumably because it's quite a minimal difference, and that it will be reviewing its quality assurance practices. Anyway, that concludes the news I got on Stats and Trends. I'll move on to non-political news now. In non-political news then, Sky News reported human remains were found in the search for Isabella Zabloka, who disappeared 15 years ago. After losing contact with her family in 2010 at 30, Isabella was never found, but new information has led to a murder investigation being started or reopened. This led to remains being found, which police believe to be her. The 39-year-old woman who was previously arrested was rearrested this week, along with two other women and a 41-year-old man in connection with the case. Formal identification of the remains had not yet taken place, but the Sky article wrote that the police seemed fairly confident that it was her. BBC News detailed the UK has threatened to sue the former Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich over his sale. Sale of the Chelsea Football Club, which raised £2.5 billion, led to that money being frozen in a UK bank account. The UK government wants this to be used for humanitarian aid in Ukraine, specifically for Ukrainians, while Abramovich, who still technically owns the money, wants it to go to all victims of the war. So that's Russian people or Russian soldiers, I'd assume, maybe Russian refugees, and those affected by Ukrainian bombing, as well as Ukrainians and people affected by Russian bombing. Now, the UK government has threatened to sue over that, but we'll see where it goes. The Independent noted teenagers have been sentenced for killing an elderly dog walker in a park attack. Mr. Coley, the dog walker, was racially abused, kicked and slapped in the face with a shoe while on his knees. He was being mocked and laughed at by the pair of teenagers. He died after sustaining a broken neck and fractured ribs. A 15-year-old boy was sentenced to 7 years in prison, and a 13-year-old girl was sentenced to a 3-month rehabilitation order over the assault. And they both escaped murder charges, but they were charged with manslaughter. Sky News covered the search for Madeleine McCann, with investigators ending their latest search. The latest search was of a previously neglected area. It included the searching of bushes and derelict buildings and abandoned structures. It was a joint effort by Portuguese and German police. Neither team commented on what was found or their findings, but the search has now ended. That concludes all the news I got this week. I hope you found this useful or maybe enjoyable. If you did, please leave a like, comment and subscribe because it helps me make this every single week. If there's anything you'd like to add or you think I missed, maybe you think I got some stuff wrong, let me know in the comments below as well. I will read them. Bye.